Let's face it, if you want to stand out with unique sounds or effects, you either need to spend time on building racks or overpay for multi-effects plugins. But what if I told you you don't need to, since there are a couple of Max for Life devices that bring something totally new to the table. But I need to warn you, they can get pretty weird. So buckle up and get ready for happy accidents, since big boys don't read manuals. Yeah, so at first Pigra sounds quite simple, like a delay. But the real fun starts with the ability to place individual repeats further or closer to left and right channel. Which is not the case with any delay I know, including my ultimate favorite hard to beat stock echo. Seems like you can also change timings, which is quite normal, but let's then explore some more parameters you can tweak. First, there are pitch variations, and if I get it right, you can make them to work freely by steps and octaves. And you can also set the LFO to modulate them. Next section is by far the least intuitive option to set feedback, but as I said before, we're getting weird today, so let's try to toggle some parameters. Cool, so it not only gives you feedback, but also diffusion, which in other terms is like a washout reverb thing. You can also spread it, and spread it even more, then set feedback to 100% to trick kids with AirPods that they have Atmos ready system. Next two options get you even deeper into delay rabbit hole, since from what I understand, you can then stretch the delay and then introduce what they call bubbles. And to be completely honest, it's not that particularly useful if you aim to use it just like a delay in parallel. But I believe once we get it from here and put it directly on our chain, we can set some cool ambience for our track. But speaking of creating ambience, after a quick test before filming this video, I think Well does the better job with it. So once I drop it on this fairly simple yet cool sound, which by the way is a preset I made for mono synth, then it acts like a basic chorus. But the real fun starts once you start to play with adding delay to it and playing with different modes. Now I'm not gonna act like a smartass after using this device once or twice, so just so you know, there is a little helping guide once you hover over the parameter and read from the info box inside Ableton. Legends say that if you don't make enough music, Virtual Riot appears here and laugh at you until you start to make something. So we can crank this up a little bit. Maybe change the timing of this chorus as well. As you can see, it can get really tricky. Now that's real chorus, now let's try the third mode. So it seems like first the sound is going through delay and then it's going through chorus. I really like the addition of built-in limiter, which comes especially useful if you decide to use feedback. Speaking of it, I have a cool video on feedback loops in live, as well as a free rack, so you don't need to set up different audio tracks at once and then go through a nightmare of setting them up properly. I believe I showed failure in one of my older videos, and well, it got me into a love and indifference relationship with Rainbow Circuit. But once I saw Sam's and heard some audio examples, it was an instant purchase. If you're wondering if my session is about to crash, then no worries, it's just this bit crusher / old sampler combo. Unlike regular bit crush distortion, you can play with individual bits, which means muting them by clicking and pressing Command, as well as you see, moving them up and down to change their volume. In fact, it's most present once you do this. Or finally, flip them around. Let's reset the parameter, maybe then mute a couple of bits here and there, then introduce more bit crushing for higher frequencies, and maybe flip them around. I think this particular setting for this bass brings the FM modulation even more, but what I really like about this device is that you can also filter, so only our high frequency is going to be affected, and that's a pulse filter, which is obvious. But then there is a compounder, which in very simplified terms makes your heavily squashed signal dynamically and level matched to the original. And this comes quite handy if you want to just add a little bit of touch of this effect and play with dry and wet knob, instead of turning it off, cranking it all the way up, and trying to compete with funk producers. Now, before we jump into the most confusing yet super fun device, I want you to write down in the comments what's the weirdest Maxvoy Live device you ever used. You get some bonus points if it's barely usable, so then you can watch me struggle to try to make something cool with it for the next video. And if you don't want to feel like a total villain, leaving a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. I wasn't quite sure about including superposition, since it feels like an overkill. I mean, just look at the amount of taps, effects, different knobs and modulations to play with. But let me tell you something, it's a true gem if you stuck or want to come up with something truly unique. The basic idea is you load any sample you want, so let's grab those vintage keys from my session, here inside playback. First, you can adjust starting point, length, as well as play mode, which is basically regular, granular, and something, I don't know what it is. I should read the manual before. Oh yeah, it's a spectral vocoder. So that's your first state. Now you can add up to 16 different states. Let's for now keep it at like maybe 5 different ones. And then for the next one, you can use the same sample, but in a different position, different length, pitch and playing mode, or you can drop completely new sample and work with that. By default, it outputs a total mess. What I suggest you to do is to turn on MIDI gate and then fixed. Now it makes a little bit more sense, but it still outputs only one sound. That's where the probability inside transition tab comes into play. You can randomize it to which sample you want to switch. Then once I turn the interval down, I can obviously switch between samples a little bit faster. But you can also do this transition thing manual, if you kept track on which samples you used. Just to not bore you with setting everything from scratch, here is a quick little pattern I prepared off camera. So as you can see, I used 5 different states with the same chord sample from before. But then I played a little bit with starting positions, loop lengths, and in fact, in one of those states, I also played with the pitch modulation, since every single parameter can then be modulated with this tab. So it's like envelope, sequencer, LFO, and then you can apply different effects for each state. And I don't know about you, but it gives me a cool idea for a breakdown melody, which is slightly different than the original melody I used in the intro. It leans towards the generative category and puts it leveled above, since you can use audio, play with different samples and different effects. But if you are more into MIDI, then I highly suggest you to watch this video next, where I showed a couple of different Maxvoy Live devices for creating unique melodies and sequences.